So right now, obviously we have some smoothing problems. Let's give them the auto smooth. Same for this piece here. Sometimes when we do the Boolean operation, it will then mess up basically the smoothing that was originally on it, and then we have to fix it like that. So I'm gonna select the faces here from the front and then deselect the ones there in the centers, 2 of them each, and then let's extrude it out like this here. Now let's go to that piece, and on that ring here, let's make an edge loop consisting out of 2 edges. Let's select the one here at the inner circle and let's convert it to a face selection. And as we can see here on our reference image, we have to invert that. I'm gonna use the extrude manifold, but for whatever reason it messes it up like that here. So usually that is what we could use, but I don't know why it's buggy on my end. It's a new feature. So what I'm gonna do is I extrude it the regular way, and then we can select this edge loop here and dissolve it. So that basically does what the extrude manifold is supposed to do, but for whatever reason it was messing up. Maybe it's already fixed by now. So here we also have a bit of a bevel on it. So we can just take this edge loop here, the outer one, and I'm gonna just push it inwards. So now let's also take a look at it here from the back. And if we look at our reference image, we can see that we have it consisting out of these steps here. So in order to get that, we want to be using the loop cut tool. And let's place a loop here exactly where we have it also on the reference image, where we start seeing that piece. Now I'm gonna take these faces and let's make an inset on it. And with control we can push it in. So now I want to get rid of this loop here. And now what we can do is add another subdivision here on that ring. So let's select that and subdivide. And now with this loop here, if we convert it over to face mode, we can do the same again. Let's do an inset while pressing Control. And again, we want to dissolve these edges. We also have a bit of a bevel on it now. This is actually a good thing. We can further push that out to emphasize that. And here on that part, I want it to be straight. So I align that here and push it a bit closer to the cylinder as well. So now what I want to do is go back here to this piece and let's make a ring selection here on these edges and let's convert it to face and let's copy it and separate it out here. So now we're gonna make 2 things with that. The first is to give it a scale, but only here on the front loop. So let's scale that, and around there we're gonna then extrude the loop by pressing D, snap it back and zoom it further out. So that way we have created a little bit of this bevel there. So now let's press A to select everything, and we need to flip the normals. Normals and flip, and that way this is actually facing into the proper direction and not inwards. I'm gonna push that a bit here to the left so that we have this aligned here with that other part. And now let's look at our reference image here from the side. I'm gonna select everything here on that part of the barrel and push it a bit further here to the front. Now let's get rid of this mirror modifier that we have on it, and let's select both of these elements and say Ctrl J to join them. I'm also gonna go over here and delete the left side of this piece that we were just adding to it. So now we have these two elements joined, but we have this empty space that we have to fill. So let's go to Edge Mode, and I'm gonna select these three here and say F to fill it. Now let's also connect these vertex points so that this is nice and clean there. Or well, at least that we tell Blender the triangulation that we want. And now let's also think about this piece here. Let's pull these vertex points a bit here to the left side. And for this particular face here that we have there for that teeth, let's subdivide it 2 times. And now we can select these 2 edges and manually give it a bit of this curve here. So with this curve that we also have on our reference image, we can now think about how we want to fill these empty spaces. So let's just select these edges here and fill that. And this one here we can press Alt to make a selection that goes through everything and also fill it. And now I want to select it like that here, give it another subdivision. And then with these edges selected, let's push it over here to the left side. And now let's select these vertex points and also join it. But we have to think about the one in the center, and let's push it here in the left orthographic view so that these are not like so zigzaggy, but more like a continuous edge flow. Gonna push that here further to the right. So we're basically trying to keep it as simple as possible here at the front while making sure that we have a bit of a curve there. Let's collapse this edge here. And let's just take a look around. It seems like it's a rather continuous edge flow. This is exactly what we want. We don't want to have anything like sticking out, obviously. So as long as we keep this nice and round there, this is what we are aiming for. And let's also fill that up here. So this one here I'm gonna take up. And now let's select this edge here and push that a bit to the right side. Now here at the front, let's select these 3 edges, give it another subdivision, and let's push that a bit here to the left so that we have a more of a curvy silhouette there, even if it's minimal. And I'm gonna use the knife tool to make that connection here. Let's select the first vertex point that belongs to these here. Let's select them together and then let's rearrange it like that here. So we don't want to have these loops too close by each other. The more even we have that, the better. So this is starting to look pretty good here for that part. Let's see how it looks with the mirror on it. In that case, I'm gonna put the mirror modifier on it. And now here for that piece, let's take that vertex point individually and let's push that a bit here to the front. So we have to look at it not only from the left side or the right side, but also from the bottom. And this one here, I think let's push it also further back so that we have this nice bow there. So now let's select the first edge here, and then with Control we can select everything on its path over to here. Let's extrude, snap back, and then we drag it up here. And now, same as before, we have to give it an angle where we push it to the center. So in order to do that, I'm gonna add a cube to our scene here, and I measured it to be 5.5 millimeter. So let's just pull that cube here to the left side where we can see it, and then let's make a copy of it. And here when we compare that with the reference image, it seems to be fitting perfectly with 5.5. We can delete it up there. And now we go back to our selection here for these edges. And then we drag it so that these edges are aligned as good as they can be here for this cube. And then let's drag that cube over here to the top where we can use it as our front side. I'm gonna change the dimension to 3 mm on it though, because as we can see, it doesn't span over the whole segment there at the top. So with this edge selection here at the top, let's extrude, snap back, and then we wanna put it to X0. Now we can take that edge loop here and give it a bevel, and let's make it as small as we can, because now we can select that edge loop here at the bottom of it and drag it down like this. So just make sure to leave a bit of space there for that inner part. And now let's bevel this edge segment here. And I'm gonna have it set to like 4 segments for it. So that way we have a bit of a curve there according to our reference image. And then we can go ahead here, select these 2 edges, and let's right click it and let's give it a few more cuts so that we have some space here to work with for our connections. I'm just going to clean that up a bit. Join these vertex points and dissolve the edges that we don't need there. And now we can go over here and fill that. So that way we make sure that these filled spaces also have some divisions. And now I want to go over here to our edge slide. And if we click on it, we get the vertex slide. And then we can drag it up here on one axis to make that a bit more smooth here with the edge flow. We don't want to have these zigzags. So just make sure you are aligned. It should automatically basically glide on that edge loop that way. And now we can go out of this mode and we want to select these edges. I'm going to extrude and now bring it over to the left and say SX0 to align it, and then we put it to 0 on the transform for X. That way we have this part here taken care of as well. Let's fill it here. So now if we look at the bottom part of it, this vertex point here, let's only select that one. And I want to copy the coordinates of it here on the z-axis, and then let's select this one and let's paste it so that these are the same. So it's always good for the silhouette to have some consistency, and now we can select the rest of the words that are on top of it, and we want to give it this curve here. So we're gonna do that manually. And we just want to make sure that silhouette is as smooth as possible. And now let's select these 3 edges and let's push them also over here. So that way we have a bit of a curve here if we look at it from the top. Well, from the side too, but it's more obvious from the top when we look at it. And speaking of which, let's take a look here and replicate that. And we can see it's these steps, 1, 2, 3 steps. And now let's work on that by selecting this particular edge here, which is the biggest. And we're gonna extrude it up, snap it back, drag it to that point where we have the first step starting. And now we can use our rail as a reference for where this is ending. So we're gonna have it here very close to it, and let's just bring it down so that it's actually under that rail. And if we look at it, it seems like it's pushing a little bit out from the sides. So let's have it like that here. This is the perfect example of why carefully studying the reference image is essential. I'm going to extrude out another segment, and now we want to have it on the exact same axis here for our x-axis for that piece. So I'm going to copy it here for this edge, then go back to this one, and then let's paste that x coordinate that we were just copying in it. And that way we have the same alignment there. Let's push it up like that, because that's one of these steps. And then we're going to extrude it, snap back, and put it to 0. So now we have the exact same steps that we've seen on the reference image. And don't worry that the rail is intersecting. We're going to fix that later. So now let's make sure that we have a nice silhouette here when we look at it from the side. And for that, we're gonna make use here of our reference image in the background. And here we have some bridging to do, but first let's position that vertex point over here to the left side before we now go ahead and fill this whole gap up here. So now we can take these points and connect it like this. And here what I want to do is take that vertex point as well as that, and let's press J so that we have it going through these others, and let's push them individually into the center, so that way we have a bit more of an arc there. So now we can go over here and do some manual cleanup, and that way we have a bit of a consistent flow there. Let's make a selection here for these 3 edges, and let's also align that here first, so that when we look at it from the left orthographic view, it's as straight as it can be. And now with that selection here, we want to have this arc there. So we want to produce this curve, and the best way of doing that is by beveling it. So let's be generous here with the bevel. And don't worry that it overlaps there on the left side. This is actually something that we can fix in just a moment. So I'm gonna have 6 segments here. And now if we hit clamp overlap, these vertex points are not overlapping, but basically they are sitting right over each other. And now if we select everything and merge by distance, we already welded a few of them. And now it's basically a matter of cleaning that up a bit. And we can start by going over to our target weld and snap that vertex point down there. And now here on the right side, we have a few connections to make that we can simply do with a join action. So these 2 vertex points, let's also connect it. Or on a second thought, I'm gonna undo this one. And instead, I'm gonna connect it here over to that side. And over here, we still have the target weld enabled. If you don't, just re-enable it so that we can connect it over here. I'm gonna dissolve this edge here. We don't need to have these triangles in place everywhere, and that makes it a bit more easier to read our overall shape as we work on it. And here, this vertex point, it looks like we have some overlapping going on there. So what we can do about that is go over to item, and let's put that to 0. So that way with the mirror modifier, we have that perfectly to the center. And this one I want to target weld, so that we have that as one edge loop there. And speaking of target welding, I also want to take these points here, because that's already enough of a curve that we have, and that way it's not so clustered there. Let's go ahead and copy the z coordinates here of that vertex point, and then let's paste it onto that one. Now let's select these two vertex points and join them, and let's get rid of this face here. Let's dissolve this edge here, and then we can go back here to that upper part. Let's also connect these vertex points here, so that we already have the triangulation in place for that. And now let's not forget to turn off the target weld. It was still on. I'm gonna select these edges, extrude it out, let it snap back, and then let's align it on the x-axis. S, X, and 0. And now we can put that over to 0 here on the transform. So that way we know that it's perfectly snapped with our mirror modifier. Also, let's connect that one here. And now let's select everything, and there were still two vertices somewhere not properly welded, so that's taken care of now. And now let's go back here to that box that we created. And for that one, we can just use the reference image here in the background to further edit it. And this one here, it looks like it has a bit of an angle there. So it's not perfectly straight. Maybe it's just the reference image, I'm not sure, but I think it doesn't hurt to give it that angle. So then let's also bevel that here at the front. And then it might not be the worst idea to also give it a bit of a bevel here, very subtle. And I'm gonna have it here with 3 segments for that. So here on that front side, I think it's a bit too big right now, the width of it. So I'm gonna put it to 2.7 millimeters here. So that way we can give it a bit of a different scale and make it a bit more thin. And now let's take a look at it here from the bottom, and let's make an edge selection here, extrude it out, and then as usual we snap it back, pull it out, and then align it and put it to 0 here on the x-axis. So that way we're already getting quite a shape here for this front part of the revolver, but we also have to consider this part here at the back. And before we do any more work on it, let's give that here a bevel. And what I also want to do is collapse our mirror modifier. So let's confirm that. And now let's go over here to our vertex mode. I'm going to select everything, merge by distance, and it seems one vertex got welded somewhere. Now I want to take this part here, also extrude, snap back, and then drag it out here. Let's copy the z coordinates here from this edge and apply it here to this one. So that way we make sure it's perfectly aligned there. And now let's get rid of these faces here. They were just serving us as a support so that we can make that bevel. But now we want to really connect that properly here. And for that, I'm going to go over and delete the right side. And we can start here by selecting these edges that belong to that cylinder at the front and at the bottom. And then we're going to fill the rest. And now it's just a matter of connecting these vertices. And that way we made sure that this is all perfectly aligned there, because earlier we were copying the coordinates for the end of that cylinder. I mean, we could also just select everything at the end and align it, but there are always multiple ways that we can do that. And that way we already made sure in advance that everything is aligned here. So this one, maybe let's dissolve that edge, and let's not forget that we have to cut a hole in there. This piece here, we gotta edit, so we wanna not have too many edges down there. And I also wanna create this here, for which we're gonna need a cylinder. Let's make use of this tool here that is new in Blender. Let's apply it to a flat surface. If we press Shift, we make it a uniform scale. And then if we drag it out like that, we get our cylinder, and let's put it to 12 sides. It looks like the radius and the depth is absolutely wrong. I don't know why these numbers show wrong. Maybe that tool has some issues still. But as long as it looks good in the viewport and we have these 12 edges only, this is all that matters for now. So let's also think about these edges that we have there in the background already on that other element. And I just want to position that cylinder so that once we do the Boolean, these edges here are already close by each other so that we can easily weld it together. So if I push it up like that, that should be pretty close by, these two here, at the bottom and at the top. And then we can go over to that element and let's put the mirror back on. And actually let's collapse it. Let's apply the modifier. So that way we can also weld everything once more, but everything was already welded. Removed 0 vertices. Now I'm gonna select the cylinder and then select our rest of the body to make this Boolean operation here. And let's also apply it. So now we can select it, take it into isolation mode to have a look at what we created and also clean that up here. And for whatever reason, selecting vertices is sometimes best to be done in the transparency mode, or in the X-ray mode, we could call it. Sometimes I just can't select them properly. It's a bit hit and miss. Like just now it's working fine, but sometimes if you find it difficult to select, like here for example, I have to be in the X-ray mode or else it just won't select it. I guess these are the little kinks that, you know, every software has its own little issues, but once you get used to them, you know how to deal with it. So I just want to select these faces here also. I want to delete them, and then let's just work here with this cutout hole. And we just want to select the rest of these vertices and also make connections here for it. And also here on that side. So it might be a little bit of an overkill to add this element here to our mesh, but I think we should just have it. So let's take another look at it. It's very small, but now we can do an inset here on that, and with Control we put it to the inside. Let's have another inset, and then we do the same thing again. So that way we have this detail here, and let's collapse that. And that gives us pretty much this detail. And what we can do now, hey guys, once again I'm gonna put a freeze frame, and again it has also to do with the mirror. And essentially what I am about to do, it's gonna create a problem where I have overlapping geometry, and I think it's because I didn't select the bisect on the mirror. And this creates some overlapping geometry around that hole that we were just creating there. And basically, in order for you to not have this problem, just use the X button with a quick mirror, which is going to do a quick slice and weld, and then everything is fine. So I'm gonna go ahead with the mirror because I'm voice narrating and I have no way to change the past, unfortunately. But you can use the quick mirror. So I'm gonna also have to weld it because I used the mirror and I didn't use the bisect. In your case, you don't have to weld it. And you can see there's a bit of an issue around that hole. You see there's some weird intersection going on, and at first I didn't notice it. Anyway, it's not too bad. Now we're gonna use this operator and put it to solid, and basically we reuse it for the inside part of that. It becomes a bit more clear in a moment. But if you look at the reference, we have a little cylindrical element in there. Now I want to add another cylinder here, and I want to put that to 2 millimeter and 16 sides, and let's put the depth to 5 millimeter. I think it's just better to create cylinders the old-fashioned way and not use this tool that we were just using, because that way we make sure that the coordinates are right and the diameters, where with this tool it seems like it was a bit messed up. So now we position that here, and what we are about to do is yet another Boolean operation. For that we want to pull these vertices over here to the left side, and then let's go ahead and we want to pick the body here of the gun, of the front part of it, and let's just apply it with a difference. Apply, and that gives us this hole here, and that cylinder we can delete. So there's a bit of cleanup work to do, and for that I'm gonna go over here and, as before, carefully delete one side of it, the left side. Now it's easier to see what we're doing. Whenever we delete one side, we have to really make sure we're not deleting any faces that belong to the other side. So just double check. And then we can go ahead here and connect these vertice points. And now these edges, as we did before, we can dissolve it where we don't need them. And here for the inside, we have this open gap, and let's just fill that up here. So now I'm gonna use the quick mirror, and I want to copy that little cylinder that we have there in the inside, and let's use it here for that front side. If we rotate it like that, we can reuse this here. Because if you look at the reference image, we have this tiny piece there. And I don't really want to have more vertices for that, but we can give it a bevel here, as well as an inset here to the center. Let's just select it here and drag it as close as we can to the right side, but so that it's still intersecting there. That way it looks like it's properly attached. So now we're gonna basically hijack this edge loop here. Let's copy these edges with Shift D, snap it back, and then we separate it out. And now if we select it, it's a bit hard to see, but we can then go to vertex mode and push that front vertex to the left side. And now we can go over to our object and convert it to be a curve. That means we can now add depth to it here under these properties. And let's give it 6 millimeters. If we compare that here to our reference image, we need to have some Boolean shape in place for it. And we have to adjust it, of course, a bit to make sure that it fits properly. So two things we want to do to the cylinder. Right click and shade smooth, and let's increase the resolution to around 6. So now if we would want to apply that here on the Boolean, it won't work because it's still a curve. So we have to go back to object and now convert it back to being a mesh. So once we have that, we also want to cap the front and the end of it. And then we can use the difference on it while still keeping that operator here in place so that we can still do work on it. And I want to give that the quick origin on that piece with our interactive tools. That way it's easier for us here to work with this operator. Let's select that face that we have here. And let's go into the orthographic view, and we just want to push it up a bit like that. So that way we don't have too much exposure there. There's still a little bit of a space. And now we can scale it down like that here. And then we're gonna select that edge loop that comes next. And we want to do the same thing here. So basically we're doing that one by one. And you can see the space that we leave to the side. That is what we want, and especially if we compare it with our reference image. So we're gonna do our best here to get that same look. This one here as well. Let's scale that down. And now on that part, let's give it a bevel with 2 segments. So let's also take a look at it here from the front, and let's also do a bevel on that. So for that part, I'm gonna have 3 segments. So one thing we want to do is push the whole thing down a bit here on the Z-axis. And remember, on the reference image, we want to make sure that these teeth still have a little bit of a gap there at the center. So let's take a good look at it and let's compare it with our reference image. Let's hide the operator so that we see what it looks like if we had applied the Boolean. And I think everything is fine. Maybe we can apply a bit of a scale here to the side. Let's see what that looks like. But actually I'm thinking it's fine how it was. Let's just take another look here. Now it's probably too much. So let's undo that. Let's leave it how it was. And then let's select it and apply. So now we confirmed that. We can also delete the operator. And now let's go over here to our vertex mode. And let's just delete the left side like we used to do it before, so that we can easily clean up what we were doing here with the Boolean. And if we zoom in, we can see that some of these vertex points, even though they look like they are almost together, so what we can do is target weld that. Let's enable that here. And by the way, let's go over to options and we can disable the auto merge. As long as we have target weld enabled here, we don't really need auto merge as well, because that sometimes leads to snapping things together that we actually don't want to snap together. So what we can also do is use our knife tool, and we just add another loop here where we have these vertex points coming out that are part already of the outside mesh. So we're gonna cut those in here, and then we just delete the ones that currently are in the center. So that way we make sure that our mesh flow is as even as it can be, and we don't need to rearrange anything. So let's dissolve these edges here. And that way we have the nice topology coming from these vertex points and edges that we already have in place. So let's take a look also here. And this one we can also target weld so that we only have one point, and the same here. So now we can also target weld that point. We don't really need to have this little gap there, and we just want to optimize it. So let me just find the right angle here so that we can also connect these vertex points. And then also the one here on top of it. Let's connect that. And while we still have our target weld active, let's go into the X-ray mode, because once again, sometimes it's a bit difficult to select if we are not in the X-ray mode. Like here, for example, is a bit of a mystery to me. But as long as we know we can properly select with the X-ray mode, we know how to solve that. Maybe in the future they're gonna roll out a fix for that, where that also works in the regular mode. So here what we can do is the same thing that we did earlier on the rail. At the upper rail, we select this here, and that selects all the points throughout, and then we hit J for this vertex connect path. I think that's what it was called. Same here. Let's connect that, and I just zoom out so that you can also see what I'm doing, and of course also that I see what I'm doing. But it shows us that here we have to still do it manually. And I just want to take this edge and dissolve it. And then let's have a connection here like that. And these guys here, they look a little bit isolated there, so we can join them to have a proper connection there. So this one here we have to still do as well. Let's connect that. And that way we won't be running into any issues where maybe we get some overlapping geometry. That's why it's always important to tell Blender or our FBX, our 3D model, where we want our edges to be. So now I'm gonna put the mirror modifier back on here. And let's go back to the modifier menu, because I noticed we still have this Boolean on there in the modifier stack. And if I want to apply all modifiers, it only applies it to the mirror. This one we have to manually delete. It already did its job, and it was basically just floating on there as empty. But now let's make an edge loop selection here for this ring and convert it to face, and then let's make a copy, snap it back into place, and let's separate that out so that we can use this piece here as the basis for our next Boolean operator once we cap the front and the end. And while being in the X-ray mode, let's press J so that we have a loop going through here entirely, and then we can do a bit of a bevel on it. And while still being in the X-ray mode, if we then select one of these sides here, in that case the right side, we can push it out like this here. So let me just undo that and get out of the isolation mode to show you why we do that. Let's put the reference image back on. And then you can see we have this cut out hole there. So let's scale that up here. This piece that we were just preparing. And then maybe we give it a bit of a push here on the Z-axis to make it match as much as we can. And then also these vertex points, let's push them to where that starts. So now let's go over and select that again, and let's push that out. And now we have the perfect basis here for another Boolean action. I'm just gonna dissolve these edges before we do that, because what we can do here now is give it a bevel so that we have this curve there as well. So let me step that up here. Let's put it all the way down, and now I'm gonna wheel up 4 times here. And if I do that, that means we have 5 segments here on that property bar. So you can also manually put that in if you want. But with 5 segments, we have it properly round there where it matters. Let's put the difference back on without applying it yet. And now we see that we have some edges here that we could clean up before we apply our Boolean. So I'm gonna select those. And then also this one here as well as this, and let's dissolve it. So basically we clear up the entire space there, and that makes it easier for us then to connect these points. Just another quick look at the reference image, and then let's apply that, and let's delete this one here, the operator. So now let's see what we have here, and as usual our job is now to connect these vertex points. As you can see, a lot of the work is usually repetitive, but then it's also not repetitive. This is what makes 3D modeling so interesting, because no matter what we work on, it's always a little bit different. But then the actual work itself consists out of the same patterns. And the more we do that, the better we get. I guess you could say that applies to everything, no matter if you're a chef in a kitchen or a 3D artist, or you cut hair for a living. You can make a real art out of it if you like your job. So now let's take these points here and do the same thing here. Let's get rid of this edge. And now we have a few more points here on that side that we also want to connect. Same for these. And then let's see how we connect those the best way. Then we have some up here. Wait, let me undo that. This one here goes up there. And now we have those nice and connected, and we just have those few left here. So now, considering that we don't really see much of it in there, it's not like we get close, we have a bit too many here going on. Gonna select this edge, and with Control and left mouse I select the other one. Let me do that again, like that, and now we put it to face stepping so that we select these rings here. And then with Shift and Control we can add to that selection. So let's do that for every second loop basically, or ring. And then once we have that, let's go over here to our left view, and actually I want to get rid of these edges. So with Control I'm gonna make a selection to get rid of it, and then I collapse that. And now we saved some poly and it's still nice and round, and we can just go over here and connect a few more verts together. So that way we already did the optimization and we don't have to stress with it later. That's why it's worth investing that time. So speaking of time, it's time to work on the next part of the revolver. Let's take a look here at some clues for it. For example, if you draw a straight line here, it's the same distance at the bottom and at the top. And here we also have basically a straight line through it. So that gives us some clues how to approach that. And I want to start here with that inner part of the barrel by making a face selection and make a copy that we're going to separate. And then we can use this piece here after we selected it to start on that. So the reason why we use the inner barrel part here is because on that part we have this little bit of an arc, and that comes from that inner barrel, and that way it's exactly in place where we need it to be. So let's put these vertex points here where this other piece ends. And now let's take a quick look at it again. You can see it's pretty much matching here with the outside shell of the other piece. So let's scale it like that. It can have a slight overlap there. This is okay. But now let's go back here and let's put these vertex points back into place where they belong. And here we can also drag them over according to our reference image. Slight bit more. So let's just take yet another look here at the reference image to make it clear what we have to do next. And that is to bring a part of the cylinder up so that it aligns here to this step that we have on this piece here, to that line basically. So let's select these faces here and let's just try it out. If we pull that up like that, you can see we're missing a bit of space there. So let's undo that and let's add a subdivision here to this face. And let's also do it on the other side at the exact same opposite face. And then if we go over here to our left ortho view and select these faces, we can then extrude it up. And now you can see it fits almost perfectly. So we can leave it like that. And now let's give it a bit of a scale here. Bring that down according to our reference image in the background. And let's scale it a bit back up so that we have this arc there on the top, as we can see here. So you see it's nice and round there. Doesn't have too many of these steps, so we keep it round like that. For better visibility, let's push the vertex points a bit here to the right for now. And let's zoom out and select only these two pieces and isolate them so that it's easier to see what we're about to do. And now let's take another look here at our reference image. And that gives us another clue, which is that these sides here are all on the same layer basically. So in terms of distance, we only have a gap going here and then this one here. These are the only bumps and irregularities. Everything else is on the same layer. Let's make use of our quick mirror on that piece. If we select -Y, we copy everything from the top to the bottom. But let's undo that, and first let's also get rid of these faces here. If you press Ctrl, you can make a continuous selection and delete it. And now we have this cleared up. Let's do that again here with -Y. And that serves us as the basis for future work there at the bottom. But before we do that, let's go to vertex mode and select that arc here, everything that has this bevel, and let's scale it further up. Push that down a bit here to that point. And that's basically where our curve starts. So with that in place, we now have a bit of this bevel defined here. Next, I'm gonna select these edges, extrude it out, snap back, and then on the Y-axis, we drag it over to the right side. And then we can take these vertex points and push it back here to the left side. We can make that all more precise later, but for now, just to have it in place, let's take a look at how this edge flow here goes. So you can see we have some different elements there. For now, we're gonna just treat it as if it's the same on both sides to keep it simple. So let's drag that down, and here let's give it a bit of a scale for these vertex points at the bottom so that we have more of a curve there. Now let's select our reference image and let's apply revolver_ref2 to take a look at it here from that side, how that looks like.